is immune from attack almost completely. With Bitcoin, you will actually gain far more from using that computer.
Did that.
to generate Bitcoin.
I never did pay him for it, but I got him a job with Dash. He makes all their videos and stuff now. So anyway, yeah, I do want to thank Epic Cash for helping us to do this and the work that we're going to be doing with the Marsh Children's Home. They're kind of a silent sponsor here. They've got it's kind of a GoFundMe page, and it's epicfundme.com. It's basically just a social media platform where you can go and post up some ideas and see if the community wants to help you out or not. So they're trying to grow that so they'll have a bigger community that can do things like just GoFundMe, but with no fees. No fees. It's just community driven. So cool stuff. They do not cancel you. Epic Cash, it's a Mimblewimble privacy coin, and they just have these other platforms. I think Epicenter is actually what they've got going that is sponsoring Anarchapulco's, well, my talks here at Anarchapulco. And they've been real cool. They're kind of quiet in the background, but they're going to be doing some really cool stuff here with the Marsh Children's Home nearby. And they're sponsoring Float Fest, one of our affiliates. So I think that's something surprising coming up with that too. Anyway, welcome to the Crypto Show. Undermining the bank and the man having some fun while we do it. That's what the music is supposed to be doing with that there in the background, but didn't work out. Anyway, that's what happens when you ask for your video 5 minutes before you go on stage. That's kind of what happens. So we have a lot of stories. You know, Ben tells you about how he during Ron Paul. Ben was the only guy out there in mainstream news kind of telling the truth, asking the question, hey, why is nobody paying attention to Ron Paul? But there's some other things you never knew about Ben. So this show is going to be about backstories.
The exposed show.
This is an expose. And Jovita Godina, she's the mother at the Marsh Children's Home, and she has quite the story too. So Ben will make you laugh, but Godina may make you cry. So if you have sunglasses, you may want to put them on when she's speaking, just in case. Oh, good. Ben's got his. Shit, I forgot mine. Dang it. So when I first met Ben in Chile, I think he mentioned that when he introduced me the other day. I was just standing there in the airport, and I'm like, oh, there's Ben Swann. I'm like, hey, man, need a ride? Because he was looking for a taxi. So he and I drove across Chile in a taxi, and thank God, because his wife spoke Spanish, and I would still be in Chile if we didn't have her to help us find our way out of Santiago.
And I'd still be looking for a cab.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of hard to find a cab there, for sure. So at this event that we were at Chile, Ben was actually telling these stories, and he mentioned some stuff because we were talking about homeschooling, and Ben had some interesting stories about homeschooling, and I bet none of you actually knew this about him. So, Ben, tell me about the TV show and how this went down.
I don't know what you're talking about. No. So Danny comes up to me yesterday and sits down beside me and says, so tell me about this TV show you were on when you were a kid. I'm like, I'm on a TV show every day. What are you talking about? No, when you were a kid, I heard that there was a TV show. So growing up, my parents decided to homeschool their kids, right? At the time that they decided to do it, they didn't know anybody else who was doing it. This was just something that they believed that they were supposed to do. And my parents also apparently didn't own a TV because they had 10 kids in 12 years, right? That's a lot of kids, yes. Mistake number one. Don't have 10 kids in 12 years. It's very crowded. It gets a little crazy. So, but then they also made the decision to homeschool. The problem was when my mom decided to do this and had no idea what she was getting herself into, because it's hard to describe. When you've never done something before and you've never seen anyone do that thing before, and you've never even really heard of this thing before, it's very hard to figure out what that thing is going to look like, and if you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. So my mom decided she was going to homeschool. She started looking at different curriculum. At the time, it was illegal in most states in the country, this is kind of a crazy thought. How many of you know this? That in the 1970s, when she started, that in most states in the United States, It was illegal to homeschool your kids. Yeah, it was a crime to do so. Which is crazy because you think, especially if you think about the way that media likes to portray society, right? That we were always more loose and less regulated than we are today, and that over time we're becoming more and more regulated. It's actually not true. And so that was one of the first hurdles they had to jump over, right? Was that we lived in Texas, in El Paso, and in Texas it was illegal. So when they made this decision, my parents, it was actually 3 weeks before I was born, decided to move across the state line into New Mexico, where everything's legal. I mean, New Mexico is like the Wild West. So they moved across the state line so they could homeschool their kids. So my mom started homeschooling, but she didn't know what she was doing. And so she started and just didn't stop. So we didn't have summer vacations. We didn't have fall breaks. We didn't have anything. You picking up what I'm putting down? We just went 5 days a week, 3 to 5 hours a day, which, by the way, there's been a Harvard study done about this, that when you talk about homeschooling, a lot of people will think homeschool kids are never in school. Like, you're only in school for a couple of hours a day. Well, there's actually a Harvard study that was done that shows that for every 1 hour of homeschooling time is equivalent to 3 to 4 hours of public school time. So, and the reason for that is because you're directly working with that student one-on-one, as opposed to them sitting in a classroom and having to divide time among other students. And then you have some kids who naturally are just better at school. Don't want to say smarter, but there are some kids who are smarter than others. And some kids who learn differently, right? And so as a result of that, everyone's learning at different speeds. And because you're learning at different speeds, you got some brainiac who's moving really fast through everything, and you got somebody else who's, like me, who's like, I hate reading. And so you have different paces. So we went to school 5 days a week, every day, and before you know it, you're done with first grade, you're done with second grade, and because my mom didn't know how to stop, she had 10 kids, and it became the way to deal with having 10 kids in the house. Go to school! And now go outside. Right? That was our life. Go to school and then go outside. And so we just kept going. By the time I was 10, I started high school. By the time I was 12, I started college. By the time I was 15, I graduated from college, and I started my master's. And by the time I was 16, I graduated with a master's. Yeah.
What?
And that's not about being smart. It's really not, because I was not an especially smart kid, and I'm not an especially smart person. But it was about a system of consistency, right? If you were consistent in anything, if you just keep moving, you'll accomplish a lot of things. And so that was kind of the mindset that my parents had.
And what was the name of the TV show? How did the TV show
I forgot we were on the TV show. Okay, actually, there's a great story about the TV show. So the TV show was on CBS. It was called How'd They Do That? You guys remember this show? Nobody does. It was on for like a week. I think we were like the only thing on it. So CBS did a show in the 90s, like 92, 93. It was called How'd They Do That? It was about people who did like amazing things. And so they came and they interviewed our family, and they put us on the show. Now, here's a funny story. So I was homeschooled. My family also owned a chicken restaurant that my aunt had started. It was a fried chicken restaurant called Pudgy's Famous Chicken. You guys ever heard of Pudgy's Chicken? They still actually have them in New York, of all places. We just saw one when we went to Niagara Falls recently. We passed the Pudgy's, and I'm like, oh, my gosh. I had PTSD. I almost crashed. Because I started working there when I was 12. And so I would work there in the mornings and then do
As the manager, or what?
Well, true story. So my dad, I hope he never sees this. So my dad would take me to work with him in the morning. We were the only two, and then there was a driver, because it was delivery. It was delivery before most places delivered. And so it would deliver fried chicken. So he would go with me, hey, we're going to do the morning shift. And he would take me with him, and he'd drop me off and be like, open the place up, and he'd just leave. And so I would be there, 12, and I'd cook all the food, and I'd take the orders, and then if the driver called in sick, if it was close enough, I'd lock the door, and I'd run the food to the place it was supposed to be delivered to and drop it off, It was kind of a crazy time. So we were on this show, and they also showed all the chicken restaurant and all these things that really seriously give me like cold sweats as I'm thinking about them. So years later, I'm 19 years old. I meet this gorgeous Puerto Rican girl, and who she was this terrific, amazing, smart, beautiful girl who would not give me the time of day, but would never leave me alone. You know what I'm talking about, guys? That girl who's like, she's always manages to be around, but when she is, she has nothing for you. And so it was like, she just drove me nuts. And so I'm chasing this girl, and then at one point, she calls me one day on the phone. This is back before we had cell phones, right? You're just picking it up on the long cord. You guys watching Napoleon Dynamite? You ever seen that movie? Oh, man, I love the scene when he gets on the phone and he walks all the way outside. And, oh, stupid idiot, whatever, you're an idiot. That was me. I was like on the long cord. And she's like, hey, I was just calling because I wanted to ask you a question about homeschooling. Because you're the only person I know who's homeschooled. And then I was like, okay, I don't believe that, but okay. If you're going to talk to me, then let's talk. So we were on the phone for a while. And she said, I don't want you to get a big head. I don't want you to get all, impressed with yourself. I'm only talking to you because I've actually thought about homeschooling since I was 14 years old. And I was like, okay. She says, yeah, I was watching this TV show, and it was about a mom who has like 10 kids, and they all do school around a table, and they live in Virginia, and they own some restaurant. And I saw that on TV, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do one day. I'm going to homeschool my kids. So I don't want you to think that I'm making this decision because of you. And I was like, oh, my gosh. This is like the greatest moment ever, because I was like, I got news for you.
That
was me. Yeah, exactly. That was me. That was my mom. That was our family. No. She has like this giant wooden table. I'm like, you want to come over? I'll show it to you. We have a giant wooden table. It was crazy. So the idea that she actually had seen that and made a life decision for herself, also not knowing what she was getting into, because when we were married at 20 and we had our first daughter by 21, we made that decision that we were going to homeschool. So we've had 5 kids, and we've homeschooled all 5 of those kids.
Awesome. Yeah, I figured you did. I know. Homeschooling is one of the topics that's always pretty important here. And this morning, or actually last night, I had something else planned today, and I was like, well, I really want to talk about Ben's story because that's kind of funny. And then so I imagined having Jovita here instead, because I couldn't find anybody to homeschool. And besides, that was a way better decision. This is going to be really cool. When you were growing up, and you said there's 10 kids, were the older ones teaching the young ones? No, so it was all taught by...
Yeah, the way that my mom did it. And listen, one thing that's so important about homeschooling, what I always tell people, is there is no real wrong way to do it other than not being consistent. I would say that's the one wrong thing you'll do. If you decide you're going to homeschool, you make the commitment to do it, and you have to be consistent. Don't flake on your kid where it's, well, I'm going to kind of do it, and then you kind of figure it out, and then I'll kind of figure it. That's my personal belief. You may have a different view, and that's okay too. But in my experience, kids need consistency in order to be able to, even if that's consistently what David talked about this morning. He talked about getting your kid to the point where they have self-directed learning. That's okay, but if they're going to have self-directed learning, they have to be consistent in that as well. So you've got to be consistent so that they can be consistent. Having said that, there's no right way to do it either, right? There's so many ways that you can homeschool. So the way my parents did it, never stopping, we don't do that, all right? Because the other part of the story is when I graduated with a master's and I was 16 years old, you know what I went and did? I bagged groceries, right? I was the most overqualified grocery bagger in the history of the world. But that's what you do because no one else is going to hire you to do anything. And so what I found was, and I will tell you that one of my biggest struggles in life is believing in meritocracy. So when you're homeschooled, you move through a mindset of merit, right? The only way you graduate and move on to the next thing is because you did the work. And if you do the work, there's no reason why you can't move forward, you can't move on. And so what I found myself at 16 years old, 18 years old, 20 years old, always struggling with was once you come out of that system and you go into the systems that have been set up in terms of finance and business and just having a job, right? You find that merit has very little to do with moving forward, right? It has to do with, well, this is our system. This is the way we do it. You work here for a certain amount of time. You are friends with the right people. You get along with the right people, and then you move forward. And that was always very frustrating to me. So we took a different route with our kids. They follow a school year like their friends do and their peers do. But the other thing that I've always been very proud of is that our kids are very much, I don't want to call them rebellious. That's not the right term, but they're critical thinkers for sure. And sometimes they're assholes, and I love that, right? Because if they disagree with me, or my sons disagree with something that I think, they challenge me on it, or they disagree, or just say, I think you're wrong, right? And it's not in a disrespectful way, but it is in a way that says, I want them to own what they believe. Why do you believe what you believe? It's not just believe something, it's why do you believe it? Where is the level of understanding that you have for these things? And so to challenge them, they'll come to me sometimes and they'll have some view of the world or some idea, and I'm like, okay, so let's talk about it. And just, I don't believe in coddling them to say, well, it's your idea, so that's okay if it's your idea, but why is it right or why is it wrong? Does that make sense? And so I think in our family, certainly more so than the way I grew up, because I grew up, with parents who was like, go do this, and if you asked a question like, where do I find, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it was not that kind of relationship. So I would say with my kids, it's much more of, at times it's a parental relationship. It is increasingly a peer relationship, if that makes sense, that I've been trying to build with them. Because while I want them to respect me as their father, I'd rather they respect me as a man. While I want them to respect my role in their life, I would much rather they say, well, this is a person who cares about me and is sometimes right and sometimes wrong, and it's flawed in different ways. That's why I take my kids with me whenever I go to different events, right? Experience people, see people, that kind of thing. So
yeah, me too. If you've seen me at any of the events in the U.S., because my son doesn't have his passport yet, he's always there. Always drag him on the road with me.
He's a good kid.
Yeah, man. He's the one that taught me how to use computers. So, help me get into this email thing. I don't know what this is, man. So, yeah, he guided me along the way. I was mining early on, and so I came home with 8 S1 miners. I'm like, here.
Figure this out.
Make it work. And then I'm getting like $60 a day in these strange Bitcoins that are coming in. Like, wow, cool. So that was a great road. Very cool. And the reason why I asked about the older kids teaching the younger kids is, but with Jovita, like currently she has 60 children. Sometimes it ranges up to 75, and at peak times maybe up to 90. And the kids work as this just really cohesive unit. I've never seen a more functional family. Like, you think of orphanage, you might not think functional family. Well, in this case, you would definitely be wrong. I mean, just to watch them have lunch, when they do the lunch, it's like this just well-oiled machine. And the older kids are helping the younger kids, and all the way down from just bam, 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 all the way down to the smallest ones. And it's just incredible to see. And Jovita, I guess we'll give her the microphone.
Hi. My English is not very perfect, but hope you understand what I want to say. Danny told you something about the orphanage already. Maybe one of you will meet the kids. Suppose they will come today.
They will be here shortly.
Yeah. And let me tell you something, why Marsh. Somebody said, or people think that Marsh is an American association, is an American, association or American place, and there are a lot of dollars and there are a lot of money. But the story is this one, why Marsh? I raised in an orphanage. I came to that orphanage with 7 brothers and sisters. I was 11 years old, and I was the oldest, and my little ones once even a baby for 8 months. When my fathers die when somebody steal the business and kill them. My parents and two brothers. My father was an army employee, so the general was helping the orphanage in Acapulco. So one day he was lunch in our home, and my father said, General, if something happened to me, take my kids to the orphanage. Where are you helping in Acapulco? And my mother said, no, General, I'm sick. I will die. If I die, take my kids to the orphanage in Acapulco. And then my grandma said, hey, stop. Here nobody will die. Don't talk about it. Okay, but exactly 1 month from that day, somebody went to my business father and killed him and my mother and two brothers. So somebody called to the general to Mexico City. I'm talking in Guanajuato. And he flew to there and told my grandma, I will take the kids to Acapulco, to the orphanage. Grandma said, no. They don't have to go to an orphanage. The father have money enough to give them education. And a mother's family, they have a lot of money. And General said, Mary, I only come to do what they ask me to do. And I will take the kids to Acapulco, to the orphanage. And then they bring it to us here to Acapulco. And the directors of that orphanage were Marsh, the second name, Alice Marsh and Lawrence Marsh. And let me tell you, that couple were my second parents. They give us education. And there was an orphanage, really, really good orphanage, because all the things come from the States. The food, the shoes, everything, the clothes. And there in the orphanage was 11 or 15 American employees. That's the place where I learned. When I just came, I said, what they are saying, what they said. I want to learn, I want to know what they said. And I started my English classes. So, but even when I was there, I was a special feeling for the orphans. I told my kids, I don't go to the streets asking for food, or I was in the streets looking for clothes or something, because the same day that my parents died, same day we come to the orphanage. They gave me education, to my brothers and my sisters too, and many other kids. But when I get married and had my own kids, I have a special feeling for the orphans, for the kids in the streets, for every kid that cried, made me feel something. When my kids finished the school, I told my husband, this is what I want to do. And he said, I'm with you. Our kids already finished the school, 2 architects, 1 engineering, and the last one of the baby was an accounting man. So I'm ready. I was working in a very, very, very big hotel in town. But I said, this is what I want. All my life I want. I was working there 15 years, but they don't give me any cent. But no matter to me, I was so happy to start to have those kids. And I said, where? In the streets, whatever they are, a baby that is crying, I want to be there. Where any place that a boy or a girl is hungry, I'll be there. And here we are. 15 years and my husband passed away. and I'm there. Sometimes we have 80, sometimes 15, but now I come down to 60 because no donations. Because the pandemic closed the business, the companies, so we really need help. Many times, many nights, hope you can visit us one day. We are just in the beach. Many nights in the night, I went to the beach and sat down and said, God, what I will do with those kids? They are hungry. Some of them come very sick. And more than that can sickness soul. They cry in the night. During the night, I had to go to hold them, give them love, because they need it. They need food, but more than food, they need affection. One day, one of the little girls was crying and crying on a table, and I said, so what happened to her? I don't know. Who did something to her? Why is crying? So I took the little girl to my room, wash her face, and hold her and say, okay, tell me what happened to you. And she said, for days you don't give me any hug. For days you don't give me any kiss, and I want it. So I hold her, I kiss her, and she slept, my love. Starting in that day, I said, Lord, give me life to help those little ones. Many of them, the ones I had, are really orphans. Part of them, when all of them come from the mountains, the fathers, the parents went to the States to look for a job and never come back. And the relatives bring to the orphanage, to our house. And my terrible problem and my terrible pain is when they come to our door and I don't have place for them. They come very sick. And they cry that they want to stay there. And I only have 60, I told you the reason. But I have a space or beds for 80 or 85 kids. 4 years ago, I have 90 kids. No employees, because I don't have money to pay the employees. I show everybody to do what they have to do. In each dormitory, I have two girls that go to the university, and they are the teachers already at home. The girls and boys that go to high school, they are helping the little ones. Because I don't have a TV for each one to have classes, like have to be in this time. And everybody, after breakfast, everybody go to the place where I tell them to have the classes. And they are doing very well. The principal thing, I thank you, Lord, for it is they are very obedient.
Yeah. So one of the things is that most of these kids are coming from the indigenous tribes in the mountains. There's no roads there. There's no bathrooms, nothing. It's like you got to walk 2 hours just to find the village through the woods. And there's several villages that are involved, so they don't all come from the same village, but they are all the indigenous. When they actually arrive here, they don't even speak Spanish. They all speak an Indian dialect, and then they have to learn the Spanish. And then when the Canadians were able to come here, they had teachers for French. So most of the kids will speak the Indian, Spanish, and French, and some of them do know a little bit of English. I mean, I was kind of embarrassed one day. I meet a 12-year-old girl. She speaks 4 languages, and I can't even speak Pig Latin. So, you know, and I've been going there over the last 6 years, and I've watched them grow, and I know a lot of them pretty intimately. They know who I am, and you know, some of the stories are pretty amazing. There's 2 brothers. Andre, and I forget his brother's name. I always remember Andre because he was clinging to me for so much. You know, every time I went over there, he was always looking for affection. So, but his father also grew up in the orphanage and ended up dying of cancer in the hospital nearby, and then came to her and said, "Hey, I have nowhere else for my kids." So, you know, the family way, that's her family. And it's just some amazing stories. There's another kid named Emilio that's gone to the university in Mexico City, but then COVID happened, so that screwed it all up for him. And, you know, this kid is extremely smart. Over the years that I've been coming here, I always go to Emilio when I want to teach the kids how to open crypto wallets and stuff like that. So they can, or, you know, just do anything on the internet. You go to Emilio, you teach Emilio, Emilio teaches everybody else, and that's the easy way to do it. And this kid still, you know, messages me on WhatsApp, and I've been trying to get him over here. He's working right now, but I believe he's somewhere here in the city. So hopefully before I leave Acapulco, I'm going to get either him or someone else to take me into the mountains and actually go to the villages. And I want to see where they come from and see their people. But even if you don't have something to give them, if you just go and spend some time with them, yeah, you're going to see really amazing later today. We're going to have a performance quite shortly right here. So at one point we'll have everybody move the chairs out. And these kids have been learning hula hoop tricks for the last 4 or 5 days. So I think they've got all of 5 or 6 hours, maybe 8 hours into learning these tricks. And they're going to perform for you. Plus we have a musical act. Originally the idea was I was just going to get the kids up here that played some instruments, but we wanted to get more of them involved. So get as many involved and on this stage and kind of feeling everybody's love come towards them as possible. And so that's going to happen today. Going to be really cool. I told you to wear your sunglasses. I should have brought mine. She kills me.
Well, I think you listen already part of the story. And I want you to take in your heart that in one place in the world, there are somebody that are hungry. The thing is in my heart. Those kids are the tomorrow people. They are here already. When I saw my kids in the dining room, I said, those little ones will be the future of Mexico. But how future? How is the future? And that made me more. I think I have to do more. I think I have to work harder to make those kids very good citizens from Mexico, because Mexico needs people with education. And here are 60 kids. Now we have 3 doctors already from the orphanage. We have 2 lawyers. Lawyers, yeah, and we have nurses, we have teachers, and that made me feel that I have to go on with those kids. For sure, with that help, and yours too. Thank you very much.
I have a question for you. So you were talking about the pandemic and how it's affected the money.
Terrible,
Yeah.
terrible.
Where was the money coming before the pandemic? Where was that coming from?
Well, we have a friends that they send it monthly uh, $250. That's not enough, but it is something.
Something.
But some of them already closed the company. Many people that was helping already don't have any job because we don't have something that come every month. We have to look every day for the one that kids need. Medicine, school, food, first number food, because they come for places where no food. 1 or 2, 3 days that they don't have nothing to eat. And for me, there is a principal thing. I'm looking every day for them to have something to eat and enough to eat.
So can you give us an idea? Because I'm sure there are people here who are sympathetic to what you're saying. If someone wanted to help, what would be their step to helping? I mean, obviously, come talk to you. But what would be a step they can take? Is it donations? Is it time? Is it specific help in specific areas? What do you specifically need? Your biggest need?
My biggest need is the food.
Is the food.
If I have food for them, all tennis shoes, no problem. All clothes, no problem. But the food is problem. They are hungry. They are hungry. They never ask, but when we are little late with lunch, they don't say, hey, I want to eat. No, never. But they started to come and sit down on the tables, one by one. And I say to the lady that is a cooker, the cook?
A cook.
Uh-huh. Is one girl that was from the orphanage. And Sammy,
The cook grew up in the orphanage
The
and
cook
had a
was-
daughter
yeah.
and had no place to go with the daughter. So now the daughter is able to live in the
In the
orphanage with the
orphanage.
mother, and they're the ones that take care of all the cooking.
and Sammy, that's the one come when he was 5 years old. He is the one that drive the bus for the school. He's a chauffeur. And he goes every place for everything that people give us.
Some of the biggest donors were actually Canadians for quite some time, and since the Canadians aren't able to get down here, they were one of the biggest groups that were actually helping out. So what I would imagine as being very cool is every year, Anarchapulco does a great job of helping out. I mean, this started out by Mike Nimitz introduced me to a biker gang, so I rode over there with all these thugs on Harleys, and then we've been working with them ever since. So I finally got to drive a hog with a biker as bitch, right, bitch, back there. I was so scared I was going to wreck his bike, but yeah, definitely. What I always do is I come by and I check with Jovita what she needs, because if anybody does donate something, yeah, she may have an excess of beans and rice and may need something else. So I always come and find out what she needs, and then I will go and get those things for her to make sure that those is what they have. And this year, the Agorapulco people who showed up here early had a party, and we raised quite a bit of money. We brought a bunch of food over, some stuff that they normally don't get, and Saturday we'll be setting up their trampoline and having a hell of a time this weekend. If you're still here, come on over.
Danny, are you the guy then? Would you be a good point of connection?
Yeah, you can reach out to me either through the Crypto Show or Travel Channel, or on Facebook. I'm Dan Axton. It's a throwback to Atlas Shrugged. But I will always put you in touch with her. Because of COVID, she does kind of have to be careful about how many people are coming in there. Interesting story. On the way over here, she said, "Do we have to wear masks?" I said, "We prefer you don't." So they don't really wear them over there either.
Let me tell you something. Many people ask what the government is doing for you. And I'm ashamed to say nothing. And say, don't say that, you will be in a jail. That's okay. That's okay. But they don't give us. Even we have to pay tax to the governments for every cent that come to the account in a bank. We have to pay tax. But they never give us a glass of water for the kids. Never. Sorry. If I go to the jail for that, that's okay.
I spent Christmas with them. We brought them trampolines and TVs and foosball tables and all this other stuff. And the cops showed up with like a couple of things in a bag. So I put them to work and made them build the trampolines. Get your ass over there and put the trampolines together. So, and they did. So they are good for some. I mean, some of them are pretty dang good, actually. The police here are quite helpful from time to time, as long as they're not wearing that white shirt trying to. And the more local you get, the better the better it. Definitely, the better it is. So it's Marsh Children's Home, or Hogar Infantil Marsh is the way it's written on the sign out there. But what's the website? They have a Facebook page too.
We have a web page.
Mm-hmm.
We have our electronic, and
We'll set
that's
them up with some
okay.
crypto too. There was some resistance. This is time where we do have to wrap it up. But when the Canadians were running everything, there was resistance to Bitcoin. They didn't want to. They thought there was going to be some kind of issue with it. But I think we can get that going for them with Monero wallets, Bitcoin wallets, whatever the hell. We can set it up, and I'll put her on a copay or something so that we can make sure that it gets handled properly and that somebody can't take it from her. So.
Thank you. Great job. Okay, we're going to take a couple minute break while we run some more ads, right? And then we clear this up. So if you guys want to stretch your legs, grab something to drink.